one of the most tragic stories in our state's history began our mission to protect and care for children of abuse from every corner of our community. The true-to-life story of Sylvia Likens. Sylvia Marie Likens, born on January 3, 1949, was the third child of Lester and Elizabeth Likens. She had 4 siblings, an older set of twins, Diana and Daniel, and a younger set of twins, Jenny and Benny. Sylvia was 16 in 1965. She loved roller skating and the Beatles. Sylvia had long, wavy, brown hair and a bright smile despite missing a front tooth due to an accident with her brother. Her family called her Cookie. Sylvia cared for her little sister Jenny, who had a limp leg due to polio. She enjoyed spending her babysitting money on trips to the skating rink with Jenny. Sylvia fastened one skate to Jenny's sturdy foot and held her hand so she could skate with the other kids. In 1965, Sylvia met Paula and Stephanie Baniszewski at Arsenal Technical High School. On June 3, 1965, Sylvia's mother was arrested for shoplifting. Lester sold concessions at carnivals and usually took the boys with him, but could not bring his daughters. Since the Likens and Baniszewski girls got along, Lester decided to send Sylvia and Jenny to live with Gertrude. He agreed to pay $20 each week for their board and care. Gertrude promised to care for the girls as if they were her own. Gertrude Baniszewski was born on September 19, 1928. She married John Stefan Baniszewski at 16 years old. The couple had 4 children together. John became physically violent toward Gertrude, and she divorced him in 10 years. Weeks later, she married Edward Guthrie. He, too, turned out to be abusive, and they divorced within months. Gertrude remarried her first husband, had 2 more children and divorced for the second time. Next, Gertrude met 22-year-old Dennis Lee Wright, and the unwed couple had 1 son together, Dennis Jr., in 1965. Dennis abandoned Gertrude and the baby. She filed a paternity suit against him, though she never saw a penny. By 1965, Gertrude was a haggard, chain-smoking, single mom of 7 living in squalor at 3850 East New York Street in Indianapolis, Indiana, for $55 a month. Initially, the Baniszewski family treated Sylvia and Jenny kindly, as promised. The Likens and Baniszewski girls spent time singing popular songs and gossiping about boys. The Baniszewski home was the kind neighborhood children would come and go from as they pleased. They could get away with things their parents wouldn't allow. Smoking, drinking, even raunchy sex talk happened before Gertrude's eyes. Gertrude's 13th pregnancy had just ended in her 6th miscarriage. She was tired and looked twice her 31 years. To add to her full plate, 17-year-old was pregnant by a married man. Sylvia and Jenny shared a bedroom with 11-year-old Marie, 10-year-old Shirley, and 8-year-old Jimmy Baniszewski. The room had 1 mattress on the floor that 5 children took turns sleeping in. Regretfully, Lester Likens never stepped foot in the home of the woman they hired to care for their daughters. If they had, they would have noticed there weren't enough beds. The house had a hot plate where the stove should have been. Gertrude was in no position to take in children. Gertrude was suffering for money. Without the weekly $20, she had no way to feed all 9 children and still pay rent. She was glad Mr. Likens paid $20 up front. But when the future payments arrived late, or not at all, she became enraged. The Likens sisters became the object of Gertrude's contempt. After the first late payment, she dragged Jenny up the stairs and whipped her with a leather belt. "Well, I took care of you 2 bitches for a week for nothing," she growled. The money arrived in the mail the day after the first spanking. Sylvia and Jenny's parents came a few days later and gave another advanced payment. The sisters said nothing of the beating. When Gertrude learned that Sylvia was recycling pop bottles for cash, She cut loose on her with a 1/4-inch wooden paddle. She hit her repeatedly across the back and head. When Gertrude became weak due to chronic bronchitis, she handed the paddle to Paula. The abuse increased in frequency and severity. Gertrude may have felt sorry for Jenny due to her fragility, because by August of 1965, Gertrude concentrated her outbursts on Sylvia. Sylvia admitted she had a boyfriend in California. Gertrude was disgusted, and so was her daughter Paula, who repeatedly kicked Sylvia in her private area and accused her of being pregnant. Not only was she subjected to beatings, but Gertrude also started abusing Sylvia with food. Sylvia began to forage for food in dumpsters. When Gertrude caught Sylvia, she, Paula, and a neighbor child named Randy Lepper forced her to eat a hot dog loaded with copious amounts of condiments and spices. When Sylvia threw up, the trio made her eat the vomit. The girls returned to school in the fall, which pleased their father. Gertrude accused Sylvia of spreading rumors that Paula and Stephanie were prostitutes. Gertrude admonished the girls in front of her own children and their friends. Stephanie's 15-year-old boyfriend, Coy Hubbard, attacked Sylvia in response. Stephanie snickered as Gertrude taunted Sylvia by calling her filthy names. Gertrude accused Sylvia of stealing gym clothes. As punishment, she burned her fingertips with a lit match, while screaming that she hated Sylvia and how she was ruining her life. Somehow, the subject turned to Sylvia's alleged promiscuity. "You should never do anything with a boy until you are married," Gertrude cautioned. Sylvia replied she hadn't, which only infuriated Gertrude. "You should never." Gertrude shrieked as she kicked Sylvia's pubic area repeatedly. Kicking Sylvia did not satiate Gertrude. She made Sylvia strip naked and insert a glass cola bottle into her private part while her child accomplices watched and laughed. Sylvia's parents checked on their daughters on October 5. Again, they kept their secret, afraid of making it worse. As abusers do, Gertrude banned them from seeing their sister, Diana, who lived nearby. Gertrude alienated them from anyone who cared. Paula once held the door open and dared Sylvia to get away, and stay away. Sylvia had nowhere to go. Sylvia's last day of school was October 6, the day after her parents' visit. Gertrude told the school Sylvia had no interest in going and pretended to be concerned. In reality, Gertrude banned Sylvia to the cold basement. Coy became one of Sylvia's primary attackers. He enjoyed body slamming Sylvia forcefully onto the concrete basement, and tying her up for days at Gertrude's urging. Kids from the school visited the residence and participated in Sylvia's torture. Gertrude, the ringleader, coached them step by step. Nothing was off limits. If the children wanted to practice judo, Gertrude had them practice on Sylvia. Some kids put cigarettes out on Sylvia's skin to hear her cry. Gertrude would bathe Sylvia in scalding hot water until her skin blistered. Paula once beat Sylvia's face until she broke her wrist. Doctors put a cast on her arm while Paula bragged about exactly how she broke it. When she got home, she continued to hit Sylvia with her cast. Gertrude used a needle to carve the letter I into the flesh of Sylvia's abdomen. Unable to finish the full statement, she encouraged her 15-year-old neighbor Richard Hobbs to complete the task. "I am a prostitute and proud of it," he etched on her belly. Gertrude helped him spell prostitute. At Gertrude's request, Richard heated a metal hook and attempted to brand the letter S on Sylvia's chest, but instead branded her with the number 3. Gertrude justified it by saying Sylvia branded her child, and now she branded Sylvia. "What are you going to do now? You can't get married now," Gertrude taunted. Sylvia whimpered, "I guess there's nothing I can do." Coy returned and tied Sylvia up in the basement, where he slammed her frail body into the wall over and over. Gertrude finally broke Sylvia's spirit. "Jenny," she consoled her baby sister, "I know you don't want me to die. But I'm going to die. I can tell." Her voice was weak and trembling. The beatings made Sylvia incontinent. Sylvia started to lose control of her limbs too. Gertrude knew Sylvia was taking a turn for the worse, so she permitted Sylvia to sleep on the mattress in the upstairs bedroom. After giving her a lukewarm bath, she condemned her back to the basement and forced her to write a letter, "To Mr. and Mrs. Likens, I went with a gang of boys in the middle of the night. And they said that they would pay me, I would give them something, so I got in the car and they all got what they wanted, and when they got finished they beat me up and left sores on my face and all over my body. And they also put on my stomach. I am a prostitute and proud of it. I have done just about everything that I could do just to make Gertie mad and cause Gertie more money than she's got. I've tore up a new mattress and peed on it. I have also cost Gertie doctor bills that she really can't pay and made Gertie a nervous wreck and all her kids." That night, Sylvia heard Gertrude and her children making plans to dump her in the woods. In a last-ditch effort, Sylvia tried to run. But Gertrude caught Sylvia, dragged her inside, and attempted to feed her toast. Sylvia didn't have the strength to eat. Gertrude struck her face with a curtain rod. Her son, John, returned her to the basement. John tied Sylvia's wrists to the basement railing. Her toes barely touched the ground. Gertrude shoved crackers into Sylvia's parched mouth. Sylvia told her she wasn't hungry and suggested she feed them to the dog. Gertrude then punched Sylvia in her belly. John force-fed her the contents of baby Denny's diaper as well as her own feces. October 25. Gertrude, Cody, and John beat Sylvia until she lost consciousness when Gertrude stomped on her head. When she came to, she gathered up enough strength to bang on the basement floor and walls, hoping someone would help her. No one came. On the morning of October 26, 1965, Gertrude and Stephanie bathed Sylvia. During her bath, Sylvia stopped breathing. The Banaszkis were terrified. Not because they cared, because they would be caught. Stephanie tried unsuccessfully to revive her with CPR. Gertrude placed Sylvia's broken body back on the mattress and instructed Richard to call the cops. Gertrude handed the police Sylvia's letter. She told them Sylvia ran away recently and returned injured, clutching the note. Gertrude feigned grief and claimed she was doctoring Sylvia. The officers rounded the hall corner to find Sylvia's emaciated form laying lifeless on that soiled mattress. Deputy Coroner Arthur Keble noted that Sylvia's lips were practically chewed through. All 10 of her fingernails were bent backward and broken. She had hundreds of wounds on her skin, all of them in different stages of healing, suggesting ongoing trauma. Dr. Charles Ellis performed the autopsy. The cause of death was torture. The police asked Jenny what happened, and she parroted what Gertrude said, but added, "You get me out of here, and I will tell you everything." An autopsy revealed over 150 separate strikes against her body. They included burns, muscle damage, nerve damage, a swollen vaginal cavity, fingernails broken backward, and she had reportedly bitten through her lips. Taken back to Lebanon, she was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery on October 29, 1965. The trial, testimony, and indictments were all jarring to everyone who read about the story. Banaszki and others were punished and jailed for their crimes. In 1970, the Indiana Supreme Court reversed the convictions because the trial court refused motions for a change of venue and separate trial. A subsequent retrial led to a guilty plea. She was released in 1972, subsequently tried for murder again, and sentenced to life in prison. She changed her name and was paroled in 1985 and died 5 years later in relative obscurity from lung cancer in 1990. Sylvia's tragic death shocked an entire state and community into recognizing the horrors of child abuse in a way no case had before or since. This case has never had its sequel. It is the most vicious. This case has never had its sequel. It is the most vicious thing, the most hideous thing, Indiana has ever seen. The house sat empty for decades before it was leveled. It is now a church parking lot. A memorial dedicated to Sylvia's memory stands in Willard Park, where Sylvia used to play. Sylvia Marie Likens' real-life story.